Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Bulldog Breakdown. I'm your host, as always, James Levasseur. In a very special episode today, we have a very special guest, my school superintendent, Dr. Cron. Dr. Cron, it is very exciting to have you on the episode today. Thank you for coming out.
My absolute pleasure. I'm not used to people saying that they're excited to talk to me, so this is great.
Just easy. Just got a bunch of laid-back questions. Should be pretty easy and simple. You
Okay.
ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Alrighty. So the first one, these couple questions are about Phelps. What brought up the idea for the Phelps School, and why was there a need to put all the schools together?
The memorial, some of it was driven by the state of the Memorial Park School and the Jefferson School. They were, I believe, 1950s era buildings. They were falling apart. Literally, their systems were very old, so electrical and plumbing were very, very old. So those two buildings were in very rough shape. So that drove our need for new elementary schools. But when we thought about the concept of one building for all 1 through 4, that was really about equity. So we wanted students from everywhere in Rockland to have the same level of facility and experience. So it really was driven by equity in that manner. When you put all grades 1 through 4 into one building, it allows you to do a lot of things for students that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do when you're scattered amongst 3 neighborhood schools. So, for example, let's say the population jumps in one grade. If you're in one building, you can make a very simple adjustment throughout the building. If you're scattered across 3 buildings, you could end up with very different class sizes building to building. So that was an equity issue. So it really was about an equity question and delivering, the services that we wanted to deliver to kids. So it really was equity-based.
And how did the community shape the planning and design process of Phelps?
Well, we had many meetings. How did they shape it? They funded it. I mean, they supported us. They by voting to support us. We had parents involved in the building committee, student input, teacher input. So the community was really involved in what do you want this school to look like on the inside, and how do you want it to function. So there was a lot of input. I feel, from across the board. Our building committee, I believe, at the largest, probably had 30 members. So we had, community members, we had people who were in the trades, we had administration, teachers on the building. Michelle Shifley, the principal of the Phelps, was on the committee from the beginning. It was, I'd say, a 6 year process total, at least.
And then are there programs or resources available there that were not available to the students previously?
No, we had. I wouldn't say there are more programs. What I can say is that the programs, it's easier for us to staff the programs and to fund the programs. There's some savings. But for example, we had 3 specialized programs, 1 in each of the 3 elementary schools, and when we opened Phelps, now all 3 are housed in one building. So I wouldn't say that there were more. The physical space itself allows us to do some things that we couldn't do. So the assemblies and I don't know if how familiar you are, but the cafeteria, it's really a cafetorium, and then it bumps into the gym. And so as far as a public space, within school, it's used for assemblies and programs as well as lunch, but then it's open to the community for community events, and so it becomes a community resource as well.
The next few questions are about student well-being and safety and trust in schools. So the first one I have for you, what support systems or programs have been put in place for student well-being?
Student well-being, could I ask when you say student well-being, tell me a little more about what you mean.
More like mental health wise, because students can get very stressed and stuff like that, with things being things may being rough, personal life, and then adding school on top of that. What kind of programs and stuff are being there to help them with that stuff?
Okay, one thing that is very special about Rockland, I came here in 2012, and I came from a slightly larger district. but I was incredibly impressed with the commitment to social emotional supports in this district. Not just the words, but the resources. We have an adjustment counselor in each of our buildings. We have school psychs in each of our buildings. We have student support teams in each of our buildings. So when I came, it was very strong, and I will say I think we've strengthened it. I was 4 years as high school principal, and this is my 10th year as superintendent. And in that time, I think we have really strengthened our supports for students social emotionally. What does that look like? There are programs that we run that every student experiences, things like Second Step in the elementary and the middle school, where students learn about negotiating relationships and challenging situations and dealing with their own emotions and giving them strategies. But I think more importantly, as students get older and get into 5th and 6th and 7th grade and issues become more social driven, right? What's it like to be a 7th grader? Man, it's hard. I remember. It's hard. It's hard. So who do we have in place around this district for kids to go to? And does every student have at least one adult in this district that they feel comfortable going to in a time of crisis? We're not trying to replace parents. We're trying to be a support for families. So we have very strong guidance departments in each of our buildings. But when I think about the answer to your question, I think about people like Freya Leahy. I think about the people that we have in each of our buildings who are trusted adults. I think about our incredible guidance staff at the high school, which is size-wise, if you look at, if you want to know what an organization really believes in, look at how they spend their money, okay? Because people talk about what they believe in, but do they actually do it? We have a very strong guidance department here at the high school, very strong at the middle school, supports at Phelps, supports at the entry point. So our early childhood, we start taking students as young as 3 years old at the Eston School for our preschool program. So what supports are there for families and parents as they're raising young children? And then when the children you really begin to take over control of your own education as you move through middle school, what supports do we have for them, but also supporting parents? So one of the things that I'm very proud of here in Rockland is I think that social emotional safety, what that means to me as a former student and as a former teacher and as an administrator is when you go to school, do you know that there are adults there who care about you? Do you know someone you can go to when you have a problem, any problem, and you can talk to them about it? Because that's fundamental. And I think that that's something that we insist that every teacher in this district feels that way and believes that. We insist. But I feel the same way for our cafeteria workers, for our custodians and our maintenance team. They're looking out. They're always looking out. So creating a safe, social, emotionally safe environment, I think begins with adults, with us doing a good job being adults. To take it one step further, I think student leadership programs, we've seen it's developing at Phelps with their student leadership team, at the middle school with their student leadership team, and at the high school with mentors, and having our captains on athletic teams be involved in freshman orientation. These are things that say to a kid who's coming in, look, you may have the easiest time in the world, or you may have the roughest time in the world, but no matter what, when you come through these doors, there are going to be people here who care and who are going to put down what they're doing and listen to you and help you. Because if you didn't have dinner the night before, or I've known kids who had to do their homework by having their parents run the headlights because their electricity was turned off. I want them to come to a school where they know there are people here who are here to help them. That, to me, it's fundamental. Long answer to your question.
No, that was perfect. How does Rockland Public Schools approach safety, both physical and emotional, for students and staff? I mean, obviously, you just answered emotional, but what about physical?
Okay, so physical safety. It's something we don't talk a lot about because I don't want people who are ill-intentioned to have information about what our safety plans are, okay? But I will tell you that 12 years ago, we started meeting on a regular basis with police, fire, town hall, our transportation department's involved, the whole community is involved, and we have regular, what we call school safety. We have a school safety committee. And we get together, we just had our first meeting of the year last week. We get together and we refine our processes for things as simple as fire drills, things as complex as evacuation drills. We are working on these things 24/7. We do tabletop exercises so that we envision what could go wrong and how we're going to handle it. And then it comes down to things that you've experienced as a student, I would assume, like evacuation drills or ALICE drills, active shooter drills. These are things that as a kid, some of your parents didn't have to deal with and I didn't deal with as a child. But I will tell you, I did have drills in the 70s where I had to climb under a desk because we were afraid we were going to be bombed. So I think every generation goes through different things, but the school shooting thing is very, very scary. And what I will say publicly is that we have a very solid network, team, relationships, police, fire, school, town. We invite our neighbors from the senior center. We invite our neighbors from the community center so that we're all on the same page. And so we have a very comprehensive safety plan. But one final thing, and I believe this with my whole heart, and this is probably the area that I have spent the most time academically studying, is school safety. The thing that keeps us, in my opinion, the safest, that really helps us with safety the most, is relationships. And that means students trusting teachers enough to say, something's wrong. I saw something that's wrong. I don't know if it's true, but bringing it up. Or a parent at home, something's going on with your child, something's going on with a relative, who picks up the phone and calls a police officer, or calls a fire department, or calls a school. These are the things that keep us safe. I am convinced that there are 20 to 30 things that could have gone horribly wrong that do not happen, that are prevented because of relationships and trust. So I encourage, especially in this time when I feel there's a movement to have people not trust one another. Like, it's not cool. If you trust your school or you trust your town government, then you're just naive. I don't buy it. We have incredible people who are working at town hall and in this school department who would go through a wall for any kid in this building. And I could bump into one walking down the hall. So it's about trust, it's about relationships, it's about picking up the phone. If you see something that's wrong, pick up the phone, make a call. Even if you're wrong, so what? Trust that we're not going to call out the SWAT team and go tackle somebody over everything you call about, but let's start a conversation. And I think that's what keeps us safe.
And how do you build trust between the schools and families during times of crisis or uncertainty?
That's when you build it. When things are fine, everybody's fine. Plenty of money, no problem. Budget problems, then it gets difficult. Something horrible in the community happens and it's difficult, that's when people who are in charge need to put on their grown-up pants and be grown-ups together. Okay? I talked to the staff this year about what I call adulting. And that means our kids need adults in the building, and they need us to behave like adults all the time. And that means that if you're upset with another adult, and this is hard, have the courage to respectfully have a conversation with them, rather than going into the parking lot and having a conversation out there. Have a conversation with another adult. This is hard. It's risky, and it takes courage. But when adults do that, you create trust. And over time, trust is what makes a great school. And I sort of forgot your question, so I'm afraid I'm not answering it.
Just how do you build the trust during the crisis?
First of all, you have to be honest all the time. Good news, bad news, more importantly with bad news. Don't sugarcoat it. Tell it like it is. Explain it. Tell people. And then move on. And over time, what I've always said is my litmus test for trust as a school leader. All I want is that if someone in Rockland hears something wacky, oh, Cron's doing this. If I've done my job and you have any amount of trust for me, I want in your back of your mind, say, I'm going to ask Alan. Before I go off thinking something horrible, because people love drama. We all love drama. It's fun. I mean, reality television, who would have thought? We love it. But if I get a phone call and say, Alan, I heard this, is this going on? 95% of the time, what they heard is a bad game of telephone tag. And that's where I go back to the adulting thing, like the trust. Pick up the phone, make a phone call, ask the hard question. And if you get the answer that, yeah, we don't agree, at least they know where you stand and you know where you stand, and there's respect. And you can go on from that. But, and the reason we do that, and this is something that I am very, very good at here at school, but not so good at in my personal life. So it's easy to do. Everyone who's here who's a teacher, many of them have families, right? And we might be great teachers, but really struggle with our families or our friendships, right? So what I'm saying is I'm very good at it in a professional setting. It doesn't mean that I confront all of my friends with, well, I heard you said, but in a professional setting, we do it because it's best for kids. Being good adults makes a better school for kids. So put on your big boy pants, be a grown-up, and if you can't do it for yourself, which again, I'm saying I'm not the greatest grown-up sometimes with my friends and family. I may not be a rock star there, but I know how to do it in an organization. And I can do it because I know I'm not doing it for me. It's not about me, right? It's about you, and you're a junior. You're never going to be a junior again. This is it. You get one crack at being a junior. And so because that's so important, I'm going to be a grown-up every day. Whether you like it or not, you might not. I really wish you hadn't stopped me and asked me to go slower on my electric bike this afternoon, but I'm going to do it because I care, right? So, anyway, long circuitous answer.
No, it's perfect. Just a quick question on phone policy. What is your opinion on the phone being banned in schools across the U.S.?
Okay. Here's the thing. I'll tell you what I think. I think that cell phones have been incredible societal change that we'll be unpacking for 25 years. Notifications on the phone are a great example. Notifications. I don't know if you do Instagram or what. I can't keep up with what the kids are using now. But when you look down at your phone and you see a 20 and you're missed 20 interactions, that makes you anxious and you want to go in and do it. That's distracting. So I understand it's a distraction. I also understand that it is a reality, it is technology, and I'm not afraid of it. I won't be afraid of cell phones. I'm not afraid of AI. Don't be afraid of it. Try to understand it and learn to live with it. Banning cell phones is one way to do it. But to me, it's in some ways saying you can't handle it. Are we better off without cell phones? Yeah, probably. But I also know that because of cell phones and inexpensive technology, there's a kid living somewhere in a third world country with a device that costs $50 who can now have a conversation with someone who's on the space station who couldn't before. And I know what it's done for equity throughout the world and across this country. So does it have bad parts to it? Yeah. But it has good parts too. So I don't want to be afraid of it. So what is my feeling? I think a ban is one way to go about it. But I think if you're going to do a ban, make sure you understand the ramifications of that. So for example, we check in all of our kids at the Phelps School. Every child gets checked in and out, getting in and out of cars, driving. It's all on cell phones. You were doing your hall passes to go to the bathroom, you used to use your cell phone. So it has real ramifications day to day on what people can do. And for some people, they don't have a laptop. They do everything on the cell phone. So are we keeping kids from being able to access their primary electronic device? That's what they use for learning. I don't know. I like to ask a lot of questions that I don't have answers to, but I have mixed feelings about banning cell phones.
The teachers that are taking the cell phones and like putting them in like their own caddies and stuff, what do you say to like the parents or the students that feel it as like a safety concern? You know what I mean? If like something happens, they can't get in contact with.
That's a beauty. Well, I would ask that parent, because we didn't have cell phones growing up. So we first of all, legally, when your child comes to school, there's the only Latin I know is the phrase "en loco parente," and what that means is I become by law a parent of yours. I assume responsibility for you. And I think this town does an incredible job of it. The number of phone calls that I do not get is astounding, and I hope that it's because there's trust. Okay, but if you need to get a hold of a child, you don't need to get a hold of them in the middle of a class. You can call the main office. The main office can get them. We can get them quickly. So I don't think too many parents are super concerned about being able to get a hold of their child at 10:14 in the morning because of, now there's a death in the family or something like that. They need to be, we can handle all those things. But I guess my question would be, what is so pressing that you would want to interrupt your 6-hour teaching and learning day, for a child? So,
well, not so much as like the parents interrupting the day, so much as like if something is happening in the school or something and the student wants to get in touch with their parent. You know what I mean?
True. Then there becomes a bit of a question of, the bandwidth of cell phones. So we can, if everyone's on their cell phone, does it shut down a cell phone line? I don't have the technical understanding of how all that works, but I think there are times when you are in a group. This building, for example, probably has 1,000 people in it right now. Maybe 800 just the high school side. There are things that we do when we come together in large groups like this. You give up certain individual rights. You do. You go into a movie theater, your freedom to say whatever you want. You can't yell fire. Why? Because it's dangerous. When you come in to a school where we are keeping, 1,000 people safe, there are certain things you have to trust your school district, its teachers, its faculty, its staff, that we have things in place that will help keep your kids safe. Now, would it be comforting for you to be able to have a conversation with your parents in the middle of a crisis? It probably would be. But you may have to forego that comfort in the name of we're here with 1,000 other people. So it's not that what you're saying isn't important or isn't valuable, but is it more important than the overall safety of the whole group? So that's what we're always sort of wrestling with. But no one's trying to keep you from talking to your family. Certainly we want you to feel, connected and so on and so forth. But let's say it's not a phone call. Let's say I want to pick up my child. Okay, you hear something bad happens and you want to pick up your child. Our streets cannot handle 1,000 people being picked up at one time. The danger it would create is worse than you having to wait, to hear from your loved one for a short amount of time. So it's always a trade-off.
What do you say about maybe instead of taking the phones and keeping them in caddies, because there are obviously some students who are super addicted to their phones, and back to what you said about, having the 20 notifications, there are students who are, who may be so addicted that they're anxious the whole time that they're so away from their phone that, that they'll be anxious and that's all they can think about, and they might feel better if it's maybe like in their bag or something like that. What do you say about maybe just having the students put the phones in the bags instead of having them, away in like a caddy, like across the room or something like that?
I think that students should be involved in the conversations around the policy, because I think that if the student understood the concerns and the research that are driving adult concern, I think your feelings about it may shift a little. And I think if adults understood the concerns and feelings of the students more, our thinking might shift. So I think that what this requires is a group think on this. I really do. But it's overwhelming that right now, if I couldn't find my cell phone, I'm 57 years old. I've only had a cell phone. I remember when I must have been 22 or 3 when bag phones came out. They were this big, and they were in a bag, and you plugged them into your car, and they were $1,000, which was a lot of money then. Still is, but it was a lot of money then. If I can't find my phone, I'm terrified because it's what I use all the time. But it's only because that's what I'm used to.
Yeah.
I have a son who goes to a private school now. They can't even show their phones, or they get taken away for 3 days. 3 days. And if it's a Friday, you don't get it back until like Monday. They're extreme. So I know people are trying out all kinds of ways to do away with cell phones, but I don't know the answer. But I will tell you, in my gut, I think we tend to blame the device when it's not the device, it's the behavior. So I remember when people were first coming out with cell phone policies, and we were talking about, say, the difference between bullying in 2000 and bullying in 1980 was in 1980 someone wrote on a bathroom wall, but now they write on this and 1 million people can see it. Think about how that makes the recipient feel. So there's all kinds of things going on in our brains and the wiring of our brains as a result of this that I don't think we understand yet. And I do think there are a lot of negatives. Anxiety is definitely one of them. I just finished meeting with senior administration and talked a lot to them about being careful of what they consume. Like this idea of you are what you eat, well, you are what you think about and read on your phone all the time. And so are we happy as a society with where we are with this stuff? And if not, making a ban of this is not going to necessarily change that. I think we need to be thinking about it more as a group. And it shouldn't be adults versus kids on this. We need to work together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I have just quick questions about budget. How are budget decisions made, and how can community members have a say in them?
Community members have a say in it many ways. Number one, they always have budget hearings, and everything are always public, and they're always made public, and they're available publicly. If you go on our website, you can find links to 2 very discrete presentations that I made last year about our budget that explains everything we're spending and why. But how are budgets decided? Budgets should be decided based on what is best for students and what our students need. So we do strategic planning about every 5 years. We set some very specific goals. It's a team of 30 or more people, including teachers, including students, are on that committee. So there's a lot of committee work that goes into it. But remember, 80% or more of the money that a school district spends is on salary. It's teachers. It's not the buildings, it's not the paper, it's not the equipment. That costs money, but it's the staff. So we invest in our staff, we take care of our staff. And so if I'm asked a budget question, what do you think about when you think about budget? I think 2 things. Number 1, what's best for the kids? And number 2, what am I doing to take care of and develop my staff? Because that's what we spend the most money on. I'm not sure if this could be a whole separate show. We could talk about budget. But to me, if you want to understand someone's priorities, look at how they spend their money.
Now, my last few questions, they're just some laid-back questions to be super easy and quick.
Okay.
What inspired you to pursue a career in education?
Oh, I love that question. My father was a mechanic. My mother was a secretary. They worked 50 weeks a year, and 2 weeks a year they had vacation. And they never complained once, and they went to work. They never complained, but they didn't love their jobs. And I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and I wanted to do something that I would like. And the first person I saw, when I first started thinking about this, who I thought was really doing something they liked, was my band director. And I decided I wanted to be a music teacher, and that's what I did. I became a music teacher. So music was my passion, but teaching became my passion. The other half of me, though, is that I was a hot mess in high school. I was a hot mess. Barely graduated. My mom was called in, I'd say, 6 weeks before the end of the school year to be told I was not going to graduate. I had missed too many English classes. And I think they had a meeting of the minds and said, get this kid out of here. And so what drives me a lot is who's looking out for those kids. Because there are a lot of kids who might look like they're a hot mess today, and they're going to be the ones running our corporations and our schools and our hospitals tomorrow. And so I ask and almost insist that every teacher in this district, every person who works here, is aware of that fact, that you are interacting with the future. And just because a student can sit and be quiet during class and smile and turn in their homework on time doesn't mean that they're doing great. And the kid who is struggling may just need a little something, something, and you never know when the rubber's going to start to hit the road for that kid. So part of what drives me is kids who are at risk, and I want to make sure that this school has a door open for every kid, no matter whether they're doing well now or not. And so we have a lot of programs in this district that I'm very proud of that look out for kids.
What drew you to become a superintendent?
I had no interest in being a superintendent. I did want to be a high school principal, and I came here as high school principal in 2012, and I loved that job. And when Mr. Rutchless was retiring and we had conversations about it, I said, why not? And what a privilege, that I get to. Now my team. See, when you're a teacher, your teams are your kids, right, and your parents. When you're a principal, your team are your teachers. You still care about the kids and interact, but your team are your teachers. You work through your teachers. When you're a superintendent, you work through your principals and your senior leadership team and your teachers and your kids and your families. But your connection to them becomes more and more distant. So I don't love being superintendent from that level. I have students that I still have relationships with who are now 40 years old. When I was a teacher, I loved doing that. That was super fun. You know what I love now? I love seeing great things happen when adults get together and make things happen, working together, making things happen in our case, for kids. But I don't care if it's the senior center, or if it's the town trying to get better roads, or if it's looking out for our senior center and taking care of them. What I get the biggest kick out of now is seeing things like the Phelps School. That's an $86 million school. $38 million came from the state of Massachusetts to help pay for that building. And that building finished on time, and I won't say the number because it's not my thing to share, but eventually you're going to hear, well under budget. That I'm proud of and get a huge kick out of. But it's not nearly as fun as it was when I was a teacher, and I got to see you come in as a freshman and leave as a senior. Or as a music teacher, I had the privilege of sometimes, because I used to teach elementary, middle, and high, so I had kids who I knew from third grade, who I would see grow up over time. And I knew their families, and maybe brothers and sisters. That was super fun. So my fun is a little different than it used to be. It's not as much fun, though. It's not as much fun as being a teacher. But it's different, it's just different. But it's a privilege. Very, very fortunate.
You are retiring this year, correct?
I am. From the state of Massachusetts.
If you had to describe your time at Rockland Public Schools in 3 words, what would they be?
Words. Amazing. So far exceeded my expectations. Such a privilege.
And last question, I received news before the production that you were a musician. What instrument do you play, and do you make any songs?
I played jazz trombone, and I used to do it for a living. I was a full-time musician, and I have two CDs. I've just re-released 2 of my first 2 recordings, and I'm releasing some new stuff that's coming out. I play jazz trombone. I've played with people like Aretha Franklin and Kenny Rogers, and some people that your parents might know, that you guys might not know. But so I've done some things, and I will say that everything that I am, everything that I am as a superintendent, I owe to being a musician and being a trombone player, but being a musician, because excellence in anything, I don't care if you're a woodworker, a pipe fitter, a builder, an artist, an athlete, excellence, getting really good at something is super hard. A lot of people are good at things, but getting really good at something is different. So everything that I am as a leader is because of my struggles and my relationship with music, and so I'm pretty active now. I've been doing quite a bit of stuff.
Where can we find your songs?
So my website is Alcronbone, ALCRONBONE, and you can see my releases and my music. I'm on iTunes and Spotify and all the other available platforms, and so I'm really enjoying playing my music on the side, but it does not detract from my superintendent responsibilities. Everybody's probably more comfortable that it's a jazz band and not like a hardcore rock band or whatever, but yeah.
Well, that is all the questions that I have for you. I really appreciate you coming out today and answering my questions, and I would definitely love to take you up on maybe talking more about budget with you in another
Absolutely,
episode.
anytime. Budget's a year-round process, collaborative process, and our success budget-wise has really been our relationship with Town Hall and Doug Lapp and our finance committee and the people over there, the Board of Selectmen. Getting, us working together is what makes it work, because there's never enough money. So budget is a fascinating way to look at the success or failure of organizations. Our relationship with our union is phenomenal, so I'd love to do that.
All right, well, that is all that I have for you guys today. Thank you for watching this episode of the Bulldog Breakdown. It was a truly special episode, as always. I am your host, James Levasseur, and I will see you in the next episode. Thank you.